Do you realize how much power you hand over when you explode? Every time your anger leaks out, you give someone a perfect map. If you want real control, learn why staying cold changes everything. Anger looks strong on the surface, but it is actually exposed weakness. Whoever can trigger your anger can also quietly predict your next move. They do not need great strength when your reactions do their work. You become an open book the moment your emotions answer before your mind. Dark psychology studies this pattern because it reveals invisible chains between people. Manipulators are patient readers of reactions, and anger is their clearest language. They wait for that small spark when your chest tightens and vision narrows. When that spark appears, they know your thinking mind is stepping aside. Once thinking steps aside, another force walks in automatic defensive emotional habit. This habit speaks before you do, and it rarely protects you at all. It attacks the wrong point, defends the wrong value, and exposes hidden wounds. That is why staying calm feels difficult. Your habits fight to stay alive. They were built across years of small humiliations, punishments, fears, and silent comparisons. Each sharp memory built a tiny reflex inside you saying, "Never let this happen again." So when someone hits that old memory, your reflex screams louder than your reason. You feel possessed by heat, and words leave your mouth without permission. The moment this happens, the other person is no longer the problem. The real problem becomes the puppeteer inside you, pulling strings of unprocessed hurt. A skilled manipulator sees this inner puppeteer faster than you do. They respect it as their secret ally working on their behalf. When you shout, they quietly observe. When you defend, they silently record details. Your anger gives them a full map of your fears, priorities, and weak spots. It tells them which insult breaks you, which tone scares you, which silence crushes you. Machiavelli once said that if you control reactions, you also control outcomes. He was warning that power lives where emotions are guided, not where they overflow. A calm person may look passive, yet actually holds the steering wheel. An angry person looks fierce, yet keeps driving exactly where triggers push them. This is the trap of emotional control. You mistake noise for strength. You walk away thinking you won because your voice was louder in the room. In reality, the quieter mind often decided the direction before the first word. Anger also narrows attention, so you fail to notice the real game. While you fight one sentence, the manipulator measures your loyalty, your limits, your boundaries. They learn how far they can push before you break and apologize. They see which threat makes you panic and which compliment melts your resistance. Every outburst becomes free data for them, a training manual written by you. That is why they stay collected while you burn and shake. Their goal is not truth, their goal is leverage over your behavior. Once they hold that leverage, they can guide your choices without visible force. You will think you act freely while following paths shaped by your fear. Albert Bandura once said that if people act without awareness, they are controlled. He meant that behavior driven by hidden conditioning does not belong to conscious choice. Anger that controls you is exactly this kind of conditioned behavior. It is not pure energy, it is programmed energy carrying old scripts. Those scripts say things like you must win every argument to stay safe. Or they say if someone disagrees, they are attacking your worth as a person. With such scripts running in the background, every small disagreement feels like survival. You cannot listen because your mind is busy protecting a fragile identity. A manipulator does not attack that identity directly, they simply shake it. They hint that you are being disrespected, then wait for the explosion. When it appears, they step back, letting you damage your own credibility. People around you remember the burst long after words fade from memory. Gradually, your reputation forms. You become the unpredictable one, the hothead. This reputation is another silent weapon placed into manipulative hands. Whenever they need to discredit you, they only need mild provocation. If you rise to it, your past outbursts will speak louder than arguments. Even if you tell the truth, your anger makes people doubt your fairness. They see volume, not logic. They feel threat, not clarity. In groups, this effect is even stronger because fear spreads faster than reason. People avoid the person who seems unstable, even when that person is correct. The manipulator understands this social reflex and uses it without remorse. They position themselves as calm, stable, and reasonable compared to your burning intensity. Soon others seek their opinion more often and ignore your warnings. Your own reactions slowly push you out of influence and into isolation. This is how anger hands over power while you feel powerful. You are fighting, but every punch lands on your own social standing. The cost is subtle, fewer invitations, less trust, less space to speak. Inside, you sense this loss, but cannot see the mechanism clearly. You tell yourself everyone is weak, or against you, or easily manipulated. The cruel truth is simpler: they are protecting themselves from unpredictable eruptions. So the first real step is not suppressing anger, but understanding it. You need to catch the moment before the reflex takes full control. Notice the tightening in your chest, the heat in your stomach, the racing thoughts. These are early signals saying your old scripts are preparing to drive. If you can recognize them, you create a small gap for choice. Inside that gap, you can ask a quiet question to yourself. What is really being threatened right now, and is it truly in danger? When you ask this calmly, anger starts losing its automatic authority. You begin to separate actual disrespect from imagined attacks of the ego. This separation is where real power begins: silent, clean, grounded power. The kind of power that does not need shouting to be felt. From this place, you can choose response instead of surrendering to reaction. You can still be firm, you can still set strong boundaries. But your tone stays composed, and your face stays steady and unreadable. The manipulator now faces something: they cannot easily use your silence under control. They may increase pressure, provoke harder, or act more dramatic to wake your reflex. If you hold your calm line, they start revealing their own desperation. Their words become less measured, their tactics more obvious and less elegant. The mirror flips, they begin to look like the unstable one. When this happens, do not celebrate too early, do not relax. A cornered manipulator can still be dangerous in subtle psychological ways. They might shift into victim posture, trying to guilt you back into reactivity. They might use allies to question your new calm and label it coldness. The question you must hold is simple yet difficult. Will you let their opinion pull you back into automatic anger again? Do you know why calm people remain unpredictable in every conflict? Do you realize how silence removes the weapons others use against you? If you want to stay untouched, learn how your emotions get hijacked. Anger is never the first reaction, it is the last symptom of deeper control. Before anger appears, a silent chain of micro-triggers moves inside you. Each trigger narrows your thinking and prepares your mind for impulsive action. You believe you are responding to the moment, but your past is speaking. A manipulator knows this is how the mind works when pushed correctly. They never start with a direct attack because that wakes your awareness. Instead, they start with a subtle emotional disturbance that feels almost harmless. A delayed reply, a confused question, a small tone shift, a sudden pause. These signals are not mistakes, they are psychological nudges toward instability. Your mind registers them as tiny alerts and begins scanning for threat. When scanning begins, your attention shrinks and emotional tension starts growing. You do not notice this shrinking because it feels like simple irritation. But irritation is the perfect first step toward full emotional capture. The next stage is misdirection of meaning. They say something vague and wait for you to fill the meaning yourself. The mind hates gaps, so it adds assumptions based on fear or insecurity. Your assumptions create emotional stories that feel completely real to you. The manipulator watches these stories form through your expression and tone. Every sigh, every tense movement, every defensive thought reveals your vulnerabilities. Machiavelli once said that if a person exposes their heart, they lose the game. He meant that emotional transparency is the first doorway to control. When you react emotionally, you reveal which beliefs matter more to you. You reveal your deep values and your hidden insecurities without any intention. The manipulator does not argue against those values, they exploit the insecurities. They do this by creating slight contradictions that make you justify yourself. Justification is another trap because it forces you to explain your emotional core. The more you explain, the more they learn the exact buttons to press. Once they map your emotional buttons, they test the strength of each one. They use mild disagreement to see if you get defensive. They use subtle praise to see if you crave approval. They use silence to see if you panic from lack of clarity. Each response teaches them something about your psychological structure. You are giving them a blueprint of your emotional machinery without noticing. Albert Bandura once said that if behavior becomes predictable, it becomes controllable. He meant that anyone who can predict your reactions can also guide your actions. Your anger becomes predictable because it follows the same emotional path each time. First irritation, then misunderstanding, then defensive thinking, then explosive reaction. This pattern operates like a mechanical sequence inside you. Anyone who knows the sequence can start it whenever they want. This is why the calm person holds the real advantage. Calmness breaks the predictable sequence and creates uncertainty for manipulators. They cannot map your triggers because your face stays steady and quiet. They cannot read your emotional state because your body remains disciplined. They cannot calculate your next move because your reactivity disappears. Silence becomes your shield and your signal of self-control. This silence is not empty, it is full of observation. You see their tactics with clarity because your mind is no longer clouded. You see the pattern behind each word instead of the word itself. You see their goal, not their performance. When you see like this, your emotional system stops being a puppet. You shift from being moved to becoming the observer of movement. The manipulator notices this shift faster than anyone else. They sense that their usual methods are failing to create tension. Their subtle provocations fall flat, their tone shifts lose impact. At this moment, they feel something they did not expect: vulnerability. Their power relies on your emotional turbulence, not your emotional clarity. Clarity is their silent enemy because it exposes the entire structure of manipulation. When you refuse to react, the power imbalance flips direction. They start questioning their own effectiveness and approach. They wonder if their influence is slipping and if their image is cracking. This self-doubt makes them unpredictable and more desperate for control. Some manipulators respond to your calmness with increased kindness. This kindness is not genuine, it is a test to check if your guard drops. They offer approval to see if you soften and become emotionally open again. If you soften, they regain access to the same triggers you closed. Other manipulators switch to subtle guilt because guilt opens emotional vulnerabilities. They make you feel responsible for their discomfort or confusion. The goal is simple: pull you back into emotional territory they can control. If you accept the guilt, you step back into predictable behavior. Once predictable, you are again vulnerable to their silent system. This is why emotional neutrality is a hidden form of power. It does not mean coldness, it means refusing to hand over your psychological keys. When your reactions cannot be easily predicted, your boundaries become strong. Your credibility rises because people trust those who stay collected. Your decisions become clear because they are not driven by internal storms. Anger becomes a tool, not a trap you fall into. You use it rarely intentionally, and only when strategy demands it. This is the point where you step out of their control system entirely. But stepping out raises an important psychological danger. When your silence becomes a wall, what happens when someone tries to break it? Do you know why your silence starts feeling dangerous to certain people? Do you realize how calmness forces manipulators to reveal their real intentions? If you want unseen control, you must understand why emotions become weapons. Silence changes the entire psychological battlefield because it removes their favorite tool. They cannot twist your words if you are not offering any emotional material. They cannot decode your insecurities if your reactions stay controlled and steady. They cannot guide your behavior if you refuse to follow their emotional script. This is the stage where your calmness becomes a threat instead of a weakness. Manipulators depend on emotional visibility. They study expressions, micro-movements, and tone shifts with quiet precision. They thrive in emotional environments because emotions offer constant data. You become predictable when your heart speaks louder than your mind. But when your silence enters the room, their certainty collapses. You turn into an unreadable structure that they cannot measure or influence. Your calmness becomes a psychological fog where all their tools stop working. The first reaction they have is confusion. This confusion is not loud, it is quiet and calculating. They are trying to understand whether you changed or discovered their mechanism. Machiavelli once said that if control is questioned, power begins to fade. Your calmness questions their control without using a single word. This makes them test you with subtle emotional traps. The first trap is provoked frustration. They try to irritate you in small ways to make you break your calm baseline. If you react, they confirm their influence and resume the hidden system. If you stay steady, their confusion deepens and turns into concern. The second trap is forced clarity. They ask pointed questions, trying to pull emotional information out of you. They want to see if you will justify, explain, defend, or apologize. Justification is emotional currency, and they are trying to collect it. If you refuse to justify, they are left with unanswered psychological gaps. Gaps they cannot fill without your cooperation. The third trap is unexpected kindness. They shift into praise to test whether you crave approval. Approval seeking is one of the easiest emotional hooks to exploit. If praise softens your stance, they learn which emotion leads you. But if you remain grounded, they begin to understand the truth. You are not operating inside their emotional frame anymore. This truth is dangerous for them because it exposes something deeper. Your calmness is not an act, it is emotional independence. Emotional independence is the point where silent manipulation fails. You cannot be controlled by someone who cannot touch your emotional core. Albert Bandura once said that if a person gains self-regulation, they gain freedom. That freedom is what the manipulator fears because it removes their leverage. When they realize their system is weakening, they shift strategies. One strategy is to create emotional imbalance through silence. They withdraw attention or responses, hoping you feel anxious. They want your mind to fill the silence with fear and assumptions. If you panic during silence, they regain control without saying a word. But if you stay composed, the silence becomes their own trap. They begin to feel the discomfort they hoped you would feel. Another strategy is emotional escalation. They amplify their tone or behavior to break your calm exterior. This escalation is not personal, it is strategic. They are testing limits. If your face remains neutral, the escalation loses power quickly. They cannot escalate forever without exposing their intentions. Their energy eventually cracks, revealing insecurity behind the performance. Some manipulators attempt character distortion. They suggest you are distant, rigid, or uncaring to provoke guilt. Guilt is a powerful emotional lever because it attacks your self-worth. If you accept the guilt, you return to predictable emotional patterns. If you reject it with clarity, their psychological weapon fails completely. When all these strategies fail, something unusual happens. They stop looking at you as a reactive target and start seeing you as an obstacle. You have stepped outside their emotional script and broken the pattern they rely on. In their mind, you become psychologically untouchable, which forces them to adapt. They might try logical negotiation, they might try emotional retreat, they might disappear. Whatever they choose, one truth remains the same. They can no longer move you through the methods that once worked flawlessly. This emotional immunity is powerful, but it carries a hidden risk. Once your calmness becomes unbreakable, you attract a different kind of manipulator. Are you prepared to face someone who studies silence the same way you do? Do you know why some people grow more strategic when they cannot read you? Do you realize that your calmness forces advanced manipulators to change their methods? If you want real psychological power, you must understand the next hidden layer. When simple manipulation fails, a different type of mind steps forward. This mind does not rely on emotional chaos or reactive patterns. This mind studies silence with the same precision you use to protect yourself. Your calmness does not scare them, it interests them. They want to know why you are unmovable and how your defense works. These advanced manipulators operate with a deeper system. They do not push obvious triggers because obvious triggers create resistance. They work through controlled emotional distance, a slow and calculated strategy. Their aim is not to provoke anger, it is to understand your internal architecture. They test your stability through patterns instead of reactions. Their first method is behavioral timing. They subtly shift when they speak how they respond and what they question. They look for microscopic changes in your breathing tone or focus. Timing helps them measure what influences you even if you stay calm. Tiny pauses reveal whether you process something emotionally or logically. Every pause gives them a signal about your internal response system. Their second method is controlled unpredictability. They change small things without explanation to disrupt your expectation. Unpredictability is designed to reveal whether you crave stability. If you seek stability, your craving becomes a crack in your emotional wall. If you stay steady despite unpredictability, they lose an important leverage. Their third method is emotional mirroring. They act as calm as you are, reflecting your tone, precision, and restraint. This is not respect, it is a psychological scan. They want to see how you respond to your own emotional posture. If mirroring makes you relax, they discover a hidden comfort zone. If it makes you guarded, they discover a hidden fear of imitation. Mirroring is their way of reading your emotional blueprint without confrontation. Machiavelli once said that if you understand a person's nature, you control their outcome. These advanced manipulators are not searching for anger, they are searching for nature. They want to understand your motivations, your tolerance, and your emotional anchors. Your silence slows them down, but does not stop them completely. Their fourth method is boundary observation. They evaluate how you enforce boundaries without emotion. Boundaries reveal your values, and your values reveal your vulnerabilities. Even calm boundaries speak loudly to analytical minds. They measure how quickly you say no, how firmly you hold limits. The speed of your boundary tells them the strength of your self-respect. The firmness of your boundary tells them the depth of your past wounds. Their fifth method is pressure reversal. Instead of pushing, they remove pressure entirely. They offer full freedom and watch what you do with it. Most people reveal their true patterns when unpressured. Comfort exposes desires more clearly than conflict does. If freedom makes you open up, they gain psychological access. If freedom does nothing, they learn that your discipline is internal, not external. Albert Bandura once said that if a person creates their own behavior, they cannot be controlled. This is the point advanced manipulators try to prevent. They test whether your calmness is self-built or situation-dependent. Situation-dependent calmness breaks under enough shifts. Self-built calmness remains constant regardless of the environment. When they discover that your calmness is internal, something shifts in them. They stop trying to break you and start trying to understand you. You become an unsolved psychological puzzle, and puzzles attract analytical minds. Their goal moves from controlling you to decoding you. This decoding is not always malicious, but it is always strategic. Advanced manipulators work like silent mathematicians. They analyze patterns, behaviors, and tiny inconsistencies. They search for emotional openings, not emotional explosions. You cannot win this stage with basic emotional restraint. You need a deeper layer of awareness where your motives are also invisible. This raises a difficult question that many people ignore. What happens when someone can read silence as clearly as others read emotions? Do you know why silence becomes dangerous when someone can finally interpret it? Do you realize that some minds can study calmness the way others study anger? If you want true control, you must learn to hide meaning even inside silence. When basic manipulation fails and advanced analysis begins, the game changes entirely. You are no longer dealing with someone who wants to provoke you. You are dealing with someone who wants to understand the machinery behind your calm. They are not threatened by your silence, they are intrigued by what fuels it. This curiosity makes them more patient, more strategic, and more precise. At this level, silence alone is not enough. Silence stops emotional manipulation, but it does not stop intellectual manipulation. The manipulator shifts from emotional pressure to psychological mapping. Instead of trying to break you, they begin trying to decode you. They observe everything that does not move your emotions. What you ignore tells them more than what you resist. What you avoid reveals more than what you confront. What you stay silent about becomes a deeper clue than anything you say. Their first tool is pattern recognition. They look for repeated behaviors that stay consistent under changing circumstances. Consistency reveals values, and values reveal direction. Direction tells them exactly how to predict your future decisions. Predictable decisions remove your psychological advantage. Their second tool is controlled vulnerability. They share small personal truths to test your emotional alignment. They want to see whether authenticity softens your defense. If you respond with empathy, they learn what emotional tone can influence you. If you remain neutral, they learn that your emotional core is sealed. Each response becomes data for them to build your psychological profile. Their third tool is subtle contradiction. They present two ideas that challenge each other and observe your reaction. Your mind chooses one side even if your face stays calm. The side you choose reveals your long-term beliefs. Your beliefs reveal your internal logic. Once someone knows your internal logic, they can predict your choices. Machiavelli once said that if you know a person's true logic, you own their future. Advanced manipulators attempt to own your future, not your emotions. Your calmness blocks emotional roads, so they follow logical ones instead. Their fourth tool is value disruption. They introduce harmless topics that quietly question your principles. They want to see which principle you defend the fastest. The faster you defend it, the more important it is to you. Your priorities become visible through the urgency of your responses. Even calm responses carry urgency hidden inside timing. Their fifth tool is psychological reflection. They reflect your own stability back toward you to test your inner structure. They match your tone, your calmness, and your neutrality perfectly. Then they wait. They want to see whether you maintain your own identity or mirror them back. Mirroring reveals who sets the emotional frame in the interaction. If you mirror them, they gain ownership of the frame. If you remain yourself, they realize you are operating independently. Albert Bandura once said that if behavior is guided internally, it cannot be replicated. When they see that your calmness is internally guided, they reassess the situation. You move from being a potential target to becoming a psychological equal. But equality does not end the game, it changes the direction. Now the manipulator has to decide. Do they respect your psychological strength, or do they attempt one final strategy? This final strategy is the most dangerous one, understanding your silence emotionally. They attempt to sense the emotion behind your stillness. Fear, determination, detachment, confidence, pain, resignation, purpose, emptiness. Each emotion creates a different kind of silence, and they want to name yours. If they name it correctly, they regain influence over your internal state. If they name it incorrectly, they expose their own miscalculation. This is the moment where everything becomes uncertain. What happens when they start seeing not your reactions but your intentions? Do you know why intentions are the final layer manipulators try to capture? Do you realize that once someone reads your purpose, they no longer need your reactions? If you want unshakable control, you must learn to hide the direction of your mind. Intentions are quieter than emotions and deeper than thoughts. They shape every decision, even when your face shows perfect stillness. Advanced manipulators study this layer because it reveals the truth you never speak. Your silence no longer protects you if your intention becomes visible. The first sign they look for is directional behavior. You move towards some things and away from others without realizing why. Your patterns of approach and avoidance form a silent map of motivations. A careful observer detects these patterns even when you suppress emotion. If you always lean toward peace, they know peace drives your choices. If you lean toward control, they know structure guides your decisions. If you lean toward distance, they know protection is your hidden priority. Your intention becomes readable through the consistency of your direction. The second sign is emotional restraint. Restraint looks neutral, but it contains meaning. Someone who restrains fear moves differently from someone who restrains anger. Someone who restrains sadness holds their posture differently from someone restraining guilt. The manipulator does not need your explosion, they decode your restraint. Restraint tells them which emotion you fear exposing the most. That emotion is the doorway into your inner world. The third sign is language weighting. Even calm words carry subtle emotional weight. The words you choose reveal the unseen intention behind your silence. Words like fairness, protection, balance, respect, clarity, stability, truth limit boundaries. Each word hints at the purpose shaping your behavior. Purpose is more powerful than emotion because it predicts your next move. Predictability becomes vulnerability in the hands of analytical minds. Machiavelli once said that if a person's purpose is visible, their strength is temporary. Purpose must stay hidden for power to remain stable. Your calmness gave you stability, but exposed your internal direction. Advanced manipulators now watch not how you react, but what you aim for. The fourth sign they track is your recovery pattern. How you regain balance after conflict shows your emotional priorities. Some people restore peace first, some restore control first, some restore distance first. Your recovery reveals your internal compass, the system that guides your choices. Once someone understands your compass, they can quietly pull you off course. They create situations where your compass points where they want you to go. You believe you chose the path, but your intention was redirected. The fifth sign is your silence itself. Silence has flavor, and every flavor contains psychological information. Steady silence signals discipline, sharp silence signals analysis, soft silence signals empathy. Cold silence signals defense, focused silence signals calculation, heavy silence signals pressure. Each type of silence reveals the state of the mind behind it. A skilled manipulator listens not to what you say, but to what your quietness announces. Albert Bandura once said that if the environment shapes you unknowingly, you are not free. This is the final danger of being unreadable on the surface, but readable underneath. If your inner intention is visible, your outer calmness is only a mask. And masks do not protect you from those who study what lies beneath. True psychological power begins when intention becomes as controlled as reaction. This means choosing your internal direction, not letting your past or fears choose for you. It means holding purpose without revealing preference. It means staying calm without broadcasting motive. It means letting silence speak, but never letting it explain. This level of control cannot be faked, it must be built. And once built, it makes manipulation almost impossible. But this raises the final hidden truth, the one most people avoid. If someone can no longer read your reactions and no longer read your intentions, what will they try to take from you next?